Hey, welcome. I'm Thibault Dapoigny. I'm a painter. I have been invited here in Saran to show my work, all animal-based with Château, that we'll see later. And I spent most of my career in New York doing my studies and then showing over there. And I've been back in France for about 2 years and started rediscovering my home, my animals, and yeah, can't wait to take you through it. Let's go. So we have the work of Château, who's in a way my uncle and one of my mentors in art. And I am so happy and excited he invited me to show with him. And between my crazy colors and his clair-obscur in the darkness, it really just bounces back. And it's a gorgeous contrast. I'm very excited to see that together. All right, let's get in. So, welcome to, I guess, my brain with a lot of pink. I love pink, favorite color, and of course, a 2-meter high painting with a lot of pink made sense and a lot of movement. In my past life, which actually is still now, I did a lot of sport and I moved around a lot. So making animals jump around kind of made sense for me. And on this side, we have one of my favorite series that apparently is also everyone's favorite series, and I called it Big Spoon, because to me it was more of a cute thing than what it is. But between the massive empty space that's actually activated space, a teacher of mine loved saying that, and just the dance and the flow and the colors that work all together, that's why I had started that series, and then it just became so much fun that I kept going. And then always with the small work, I try to go from really large to really small to the tiny brushes on these guys to get a much more intimate moment. And then we'll come back to the ink drawings a little later. For more color, we have the calves. When I came back to France 2 years ago, I rediscovered the countryside, and I'm from Seine-et-Marne. So we have a lot of farms, and it was a lot of fun rediscovering the animals that we have here with, animals that we don't necessarily look at that much. And always with very bright color, with that challenge of making the subject as explosive as possible, but still in contrast to the bright colors. And yeah, it's my baby. More little work, and I guess it's kind of fun that they're next to each other in that way, because I always have them in the same at the same time in the studio and bounce back and forth, go from the very detailed drawing that I can't erase, so that's fountain pen ink, and I kind of started forcing myself, but now I'm addicted to it, to really get in the nitty-gritty detail of a bird without being able to erase, and that kind of translates to the oil paintings that are much more flexible, and that kind of feeds each practice. More cows, that kind of struck me when I saw it, and then I had to put it back together between the skies that we have here in the region that are always so cloudy and stormy, even if it's nice, and the cows that are just so inquisitive, just looking at you, and they kind of hold you, and that's what I tried giving back in that painting, or the sense that when you're looking at them, they're kind of in charge. And I really love the way it's hung now, it's a little higher, so they're kind of looking down. And then the final touch on this one, and the series that goes with it, we'll see later, was that yellow line that just wrapped the whole painting. It made no sense. I had put it there at first. I was kind of upset with the painting. We painters, or maybe artists in general, when we spend a lot of time with an object and a picture, we end up kind of personifying it, and it definitely happened here. But now we're fine, we're good, we have a good relationship. And then there's the big boy. This one came out of, I had been wanting to paint something completely different than the animals I paint. Usually, kind of farm-related animals and birds from my yard. And he made so much sense as the opposite of that. And there was so much color, and I was allowed to use so much white, which there's actually not a single spot of actual white, because it's always color. And we had a discussion with Château, the other artist, about painting something that we know is white, like a polar bear, but there is always a color. Same thing for darkness. One thing that freaked me out with this one was the amount of darkness I would have to deal with in the center, and the fact that there was not necessarily information, but that it needed to be colorful. And then we move back to the farm animals. When I was painting this series, which is the same as in the really big one we just saw, I got completely stuck. And my dad actually thought it would be a good idea to go in a farm nearby and actually get to touch and see cows. And I met this little guy. He was born an hour before we arrived, and it was absolutely magical. It sounds stereotypical, but go touch a cow, an animal. It's just, it changed me, and that's where all these legs, dangling legs started, and the fact that a baby animal that's just born just needs to learn how to walk so fast, which we don't do as humans, but at first it just looks like they're wondering, like, what are those things that I'm on? What are those things attached to me? So that started a love story, and then I guess he grew a little bit, but in this case, same thing. I guess he learned to stand and run, but I kept it to the first step of the paintings. So every single painting that you see, I first put brown on it, so it's just oil paint. They're all oil paint, and I start straight on the canvas with oil paint, brown, because it's a more neutral color for me. And as it's still wet, I draw in it with a rag, and I start with a fairly large rag the size of my hand, just kind of in a ball, to really just play with it and create that same thing as like an image that you see in a cloud, and then you see something in the cloud and then you cannot see it, and then it really takes shape. And then in the details, those little lines are actually my nails to get a little more detailed line, and that's just the most fun for me. So recently, and we'll see later, there's 2 of those so far. I decided to just leave them as they are because I consider them to be finished pieces, not just a drawing, but a painting. I'm very excited with that little face. The zoomed in version of the cows. I ended up calling them, the series is called Sassy Cows. It was my favorite word when I worked in Brooklyn also as a teacher, and I was in middle school, and the favorite word of that year was sassy. And it's just so perfect because everyone's sassy in a sense. They most definitely are. They embody that word for me, and I absolutely love it. But in a simple way, and I didn't try to necessarily make them what I wanted to be. They just kind of came out that way with the attitude. And then we have the pig. I often talk about being a figurative painter, but also a little bit impressionist. I'm losing my word, doesn't matter. I'm sure we understood that word. And there's that idea of, you know, the opposite of figuration being abstraction. So I kind of take a walk starting at abstraction, we'll say, and then I stop when I've reached a point I'm happy, and that must be one of my most abstract paintings, but I won't say exactly what it is if I haven't yet, because 50% of people see it right away and 50% don't, which I'm totally fine with. I like it. And we're going to go to the next room, having to go through Captain's work, which is amazing, which has been an inspiration for me forever since I was born. We've known each other, and he's known me my whole life, and I was always impressed with his work. So I've taken a lot from him. We've had a lot of discussion about white, for example. The horse that is essentially supposed to be white has no white on the painting, because the translation we do with the brain is quite simple. We know the horse is white, but if we get closer, it's all gorgeous pinks and sand colors. And that's definitely something I'm trying to steal and use. It's an amazing example to have, and I'm a little jealous that I don't have a painting that big. That's just magnificent. I absolutely love it. And it's not that the painting is more impressive because it's big, it's just the possibilities and the options that you have when you paint that big are just that much more fun. Alright. And these little babies. I love them. He knows it. One might disappear. I might take it. And in this room we've decided to mix it up and really have each other's work, kind of have a conversation with the other. So we have a few of his in the corner, little donkey and a cow that were directing us directly to both of our work. So that's Château, and those are mine. I love this one. And I find it absolutely adorable how they're kind of in the little corner having a discussion. She looks upset, but she's not. She's just in a situation where we are looking at her butt, which is totally fine. It's good. And on this side, really just sort of the zigzag of work, Thibault Dapoigny, and just the fact that the cows is kind of looking over the little calf. That was a study for a painting we saw earlier. Our two takes on the goose, which is so funny to see together. And then we go on, and I love the fact here, for example, well, clearly we have our two versions, and the detail of the eyes went a little crazy on this one. But the front and the back, it's very silly, but I find it funny. These guys, which are the second series of birds that I've been doing, I spent about a year, and we'll see in the next room, doing birds that are in very small, closed, intimate environment. And I decided, well, if I'm painting massive animals that don't fly, chomping around, I might as well get my birds flying. So that was the first one. Decided to even make it more of a challenge and paint yellow in the background, just to be more difficult, which it was, but I'm very happy. And there will be more, absolutely a lot more, probably much bigger too. And our little corner, it's like they're hanging out. And in my mind, my little nuthatch wants to be friends with the chickens. And I think it's happening. But they're adorable. And we had a lot of conversation with Château about the eyes, how important they are, even if you don't necessarily see them all the time. But it kind of tells you everything. Whether it's a mood, a direction, it throws you back one way in the painting, or it just brings you back in, which is really cool. In the second version of the painting we saw earlier, with just one layer of paint and drawing on top of it, and I work exactly the same way with charcoal, and I teach the same way with charcoal. It's just very simply covering a lot of space, and then once you have that space covered, bringing the light back out with a rag, with your hand, with an eraser. And we also have that conversation about using your left hand. So in this case, I'll have the paintbrush in my left hand, and I'm a righty, so I have the rag in my right hand. So I'm erasing on one side, and if I need to bring back the color, my left hand will not be able to draw. So it's really just adding on the color to it. And same thing, that cloud idea where the painting comes out by itself, and the explosion happens. This one was supposed to be painted, but I was so happy with it. I left it just like that. I'm very excited. And now on to the next room. So here again, we've mixed it up a little bit, starting with Château's bulls and cows, which I absolutely love. This one, again, we spoke about framing and having the guts to just cut it off right here. And I have that mountain. In my mind, if you hide the top, it's just like a little mountain that you can climb on, and then you're on top of the world up there, and there's nothing else but you. And then the paper sketches that we both do and love, and it's a little quicker too, so it's really nice, less pressure. The birds I was mentioning earlier, they're in their little, I don't know, it's just, to me it's poetic. I know someone before in a show told me it felt sad to her, but I don't find it sad. I find it peaceful, quiet, without humans, without the mess that humans kind of bring to the party anywhere they go. And after living in New York for so long and constantly having noise, I know when I came back I had a hard time falling asleep. There was just no noise at all, and that's something that I think every New Yorker or anyone from a big city kind of experiences. And I had to get used to the quiet, not in a good way at first, but then the first sounds that I remember paying attention to were these guys. And we don't pay attention to our birds in our yards. I know in the US it's a big thing, not bird watching, but having a bird feeder, having cardinals, having blue jays, all that is just, everyone does it, and we love birds and they're so colorful. I just don't understand that just because we have birds that are a little more gray and darker, we don't play with that. So I went completely crazy. I had an entire series, did 20 to 30 of those, absolutely loved it. Got completely lost in it, and we have a few more here. And then we get back to Big Spoon. I just love it. I fell back in love with red, which I hated at first. I had so much fun with that. But to me, again, it was about the negative space and that journey, that puzzle piece that we have to follow along here, all the way down here, and the suggestion, of course, of what's going on. I find it very interesting that in insects you don't have not emotions, but you know what's going on. There's just no face, so it's kind of an anonymous moment, even though it's intimate. I kind of like that. I will definitely do more. I have pandas. Pandas from the same series in another show in Montreux, and it's a whole different story because pandas are so much more expressive, so much closer to us. So that's something else to check out. And then after more regular formats, and I love those colors, I finally got to even weirder formats, and working on a round is, it felt easy, but it's also a little weird. Not falling into stereotypes of using the round, of loops, of trying to use the center or trying to use the spiral. I try to keep it simple. I try to keep it as much about the lotus flower as the kingfisher himself. And very surprisingly, we only in Europe have one kind of kingfisher, whereas there's hundreds in the world. So we need more. They're gorgeous. I love them, and I have so much fun with them. Another little bird, an intimate moment, and really I kind of lost myself. I get very obsessive about certain things, and I totally lost myself in the moth and the tree. Absolutely have fun with that. And finally, what I think will be the next large painting, whether one or more. It's actually, for me, it started as a small study, but now it's a piece that I love. I really wanted kind of to go the way Château works and go with the clair-obscur and the very dark and that brightness, but I also wanted to make sure to still have popping colors that would be fun and not too classical. I love classical paintings, but I think it's been done so well before that I might as well try something else, and I wanted to have those almost Lego colors on it, and those primary colors that are just, I don't know, it reminds me of my Legos when I was a kid. So all of this was just so much fun to do, and it really worked. And there's no black in the paintings. That's the one thing that we spoke about with Château, is that we don't use black. I mean, I'm pretty sure we don't use black paint at all. The lack of light is still a color, and that's kind of important. And even to make him explode the way he's exploding, that background needs to be something else than black, and it is brown violet. And the more we look at it, the more we also see what's underneath, and it just becomes warm, and it just kind of works with the painting. So yeah, and I love leaving little birds' legs and feet, or so much fun, and leaving them for the viewer to complete, because I don't think I need to do all the work. I like the viewer to be able to complete the painting, and it's kind of more fun for you when you have information to fill in, and when you can appropriate the painting to yourself and the story between you and him, not us three. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for coming through, and I hope to see you here.